Welcome to Hosanna Fellowship and a special welcome to our visitors here tonight. Have you ever been in a situation where you constantly evaluate yourself according to society? I know I have. Tonight we're looking at part one of a four-part series on the value of yourself and others. This special event is titled Valuing Yourself. This creative art presentation comes to you in the way of song, dance, drama and the spoken word. So I ask you to relax and enjoy what we have for you tonight. And I'm going to ask you to please stand. This is your chance to participate in our service, and we'd like you to join in our song, Rock of the Ages. Let's welcome on the music team.
Presentation, we will take up our tithes and offerings. We're committed to giving to God as part of our Christian community, but if you are visiting here, there's no expectation for you to participate. This presentation is our gift to you. So while the bags are being passed along the road and down the aisles, you could just help us by passing them along. So while the bags are being passed around, I'll pray for the offerings. Father God, you are our provider, and your word promises that you will provide for all our needs. Bless this money that we've given tonight, that we may grow your kingdom, that others may come to know and trust in you also. In Jesus' name, amen. Tonight, as we've heard, the first of 4 sessions on valuing. Next week in the morning and the following week in the morning, we're looking at judging others. And we all do that. People say and do things and we think, oh, didn't think much of that, or wow, that's impressive. And we compare ourselves and judge them as well. So come along and hear how we should judge others, how we should judge others. The following morning is the Father's Day special. As you leave tonight, there are flyers out here by the door, so feel free to pick one up to remind you the times and the subjects that we have coming up. And at the end of the service, we invite you to join us for tea and coffee out in the foyer, the chance to talk to those people you came with or talk to anyone else about what you've seen and heard here tonight. Now this last week I was looking at the Open Polytechnic courses because I was thinking about training in some new areas. And I was quite interested in what they'd written in their handbook about the students who enroll there. So I might even read it. So those students were a diverse group with a common purpose of self-improvement, whether studying for a job, career, or a hobby. They were on the right track to becoming more fulfilled. We'll see what our drama says about that. But whether studying for whatever you're studying for, in this changing world, self-improvement is one of the most useful things we can do to move our lives forward. And we do have to move our lives forward. No matter what we've done or have done to us, nothing is unforgivable or can't be set free. And they're actually the last verse of the song that we've got coming up. We've got a song and a dance together called Unforgivable, so that we can welcome on the dance and the musicians. Thank you.
Music was awesome. I have a reading from the Bible. But by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the measure of faith God has given you. Just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same parts, do not all have the same function, so in Christ, we who are many form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. Piece of wisdom. A man's pride brings him low, but a man of lowly spirit gains honour. Well, pride can lead to many things, including denial. And denial can lead to making assumptions without all the bits and pieces and the information you need. Tonight's drama is titled The Missing Piece. I'd like you to join with me in welcoming the drama team.
Yeah, put a few projects on hold at work so I could get an early start on the weekend.
Yeah, we're doing something special.
No, I just thought it'd be a good time for them to give me and the kids to spend some time together.
Oh, how no. Actually, I do think there is someone that needs our attention.
Tim, well, what's wrong with him?
Oh, he's been acting really lately.
Well, he has been a little bit quiet, but it's probably due to the fact of the big decisions that he's got to make for varsity and the future.
Howard, it might be more than that. Some girl in trouble.
Margaret, how so, Tim?
Well, they act you really strangely.
No son of mine had better be doing anything of the sort. Where is he? Let's talk about this right here, right now.
You be gentle.
Be gentle. Tim, get down here right now.
Howard, look, don't do anything rash.
Rash? He's gonna need our help. Tim, get down here now.
Yeah, what's up?
You sit down.
Did I do something wrong?
You tell me.
Tell you what.
Okay, we're gonna play like that, you know, Let's start with her name.
Whose name?
The girl, Tim. Who's the girl?
Oh, what do you mean, Melissa? It's just a girl I know from school.
You know is right. Like Adam knew Eve.
Well, it's all right. Your father and I are here now.
Come on, Tim. We're not stupid. We weren't born yesterday. We know you got some girl pregnant.
What?
Yeah, that's right. The cards are on the table now.
What are you talking about?
Now, it's no use lying, dear.
Why? Where'd you get such a stupid idea?
It was your mother, Margaret.
I just thought that, you know, you're acting so strange and withdrawn, and I just thought, you know.
We can just stop thinking. I can't believe it. My own parents.
It was your mum. It was your mother. Margaret, how can you think that? We raised our son better than that. Oh, sometimes you get carried away.
Hey! Carried away! You're the one that... Oh, never mind.
Look, what's wrong? Your mother is right about one thing. You have been acting a little strange lately.
I know. I've been doing a lot of thinking.
About what?
Life.
You know, it's being a parent former and, you know, making decisions and worrying about varsity and who to take to the school.
Mum, it's more than that. I just feel my life has no meaning. No more purpose.
Well, I don't know what it is. I mean, because we've given you a TV, we've given you a car, a compact disc player.
And you've got that little girlfriend, Vanessa.
And
Your friends, I can't keep track of them all.
And we've given you a home and a roof over your head.
And food.
I know. But it's not you. It's just... Well, giving me everything that I could ever need or want.
Well, what is it then?
I don't know. Going to college.
Oh,
Finish college.
yes. And we're so proud of you.
Well, I'm going to varsity next year and for 4 years preparing for my life. Why?
Why? That's the most craziest thing I've ever heard of. Why else? For security, stability, and not to mention a steady income.
Security, stability, money, all coming from a job working 15 hours a day. What sort of a life is that?
Oh, it's a damn good one if you ask me. I mean, it's been good for your mother and myself, and I haven't heard you complain.
Dad, I don't mean to cut you down for everything you work for, but I just feel like I need more. I mean, what sort of life is getting up there 7 in the morning and going to a job all day, coming back, and then having tea, coming and then watching TV, going to bed and doing it all over again?
Don't forget the 2 weeks holiday you have every year.
So you think you can do it better than, eh?
No, Dad, that's not what I'm saying.
Oh, I know what you're saying. You haven't been hanging out with those weirdo, crazy freaks from school, have you? I mean, the next thing I know, you're going to be shaving your head, wearing orange robes, and running up and down the street and charging. And if that's the case, boy, you better watch out!
Dad, no. Quite the opposite. Hanging out with some dudes that really seem to know things. They all seem to have it all together. They seem to have purpose in their lives.
That's what it looks like on the outside. Take it from your old man. Nobody has it all together, as you put it. This is it. There's nothing else. This is all life has to offer. And you're just wasting your time and energy finding a solution.
Your father's right here. Isn't it good you're thinking all these thoughts while you're so young? Wait till you're our age. You've got all the time in the world to think.
I don't want to wait. I can't wait. I'm 18 and I still don't know what I want to do.
Look, Tim, I think I know what you're going through. I went through the same thing when I was your age. And let me offer you some advice. I found at times where life raised questions like this, times like that, I found that it was best not to think about them. And the sooner you realise that, the better off you'll be.
No offense, Dad, but I need a plan in my life. I need some meaning in my life.
You're still young. You've got plenty of time to think about those sorts of things.
I just need more meaning.
Look, I've got a great idea. Why don't we just go out for a big picture and forget all this talk? And talk about, you know, us and girls and future and holidays. You know, I'd like to go. Now, doesn't that sound like fun?
No, thanks, Mum. I'm not hungry. You two go ahead.
Look, Tim, we'll talk about this later, okay? One day you'll learn. You just gotta have to someday accept this is all you get.
You know, life is like this. We're always trying to keep balance in things, aren't we? You know, it's just what Mum and Dad want. Just like they said. Or it's just like they want it at work or at school. Or it's just like our best friends. But it seems to be a struggle all the time. If we're not careful, we can be so focused on what others want, we won't be able to see where we're putting our feet, and before long, we're gone. It would be so much easier if we didn't have to balance the way that others would like us to. And yet, that's the way it is. It's been said, the world has a lot of glitter, but it doesn't have the glow of the promises it makes. And it's true. And tonight, as we speak about valuing ourselves, I want to take it and say that it's a way of measuring the way we value ourselves. And the one clear way that many of us refer to in our lives is the whole issue of self-esteem. But it's not self-esteem in the way perhaps it's been popularly discussed. It has to do with a lot wider, a lot broader context in our lives. And so tonight, what I'm going to do, in our first of our series on the benchmarks of society, value that society has created for us, valuing yourself. I want to go on a journey. Somebody's going to lift it for me, thank you. I want to go on a journey tonight to look at the things that have impacted us
And whether we claim to be a part of the community of God, or whether we claim to be something else, there are pressures and there are things that would have us balancing in a lifelong act on things we may not want to be part of, things we may want to be part of but can't see the dangers of, but that's the way it is. There we go. It happens everywhere. It happens in churches, it happens in the street, and I think it gets even worse in churches where nominalism exists, where you just go to church because that is the thing to do. And it's certainly something that happened when I was younger a lot in the context of the society I lived in at the time when I was younger. And in those churches you always had a choir that, well, usually the confident ones led and were strong. There were others there, but it was often said that the choir was the tail that wagged the dog. And so you end up with some new sheep bloopers. And I wonder if in actual fact it was the heart of the person speaking rather than the accent of the typist. One of the new sheep bloopers said this: "The over 60s choir will be disbanded for the summer with the thanks of the entire church." You're very slow, well, you don't appreciate choirs. The second one I found, at the evening service, the sermon topic will be, "What is hell?" Come early and listen to the choir practice. You see, we tie things up and sometimes we say things by accident that are just sitting there looking at us. People will often say, what is it? What is it that that person has that I don't have? What is it? What is this thing that is there that I would like to have? How come they seem to be so confident? How come they seem to have it together? Well, probably the word "seem" is a good word to think about, because I don't think it's always the reality. Most of us are aware of how much our environment affects us. Let's have a look. It has to do, as I said earlier, with self-image. And there are some contributing factors that go towards this whole self-image thing. For example, there's family, there's education, there are experiences, culture, opportunities, our looks, a personality. You can take any one of these things and you can find an area where perhaps you've been pressured. When I was young, in my family environment, my parents hadn't had a good education, and the consequence was that their expectations were very high for us as children. But one of the problems that happened was that they constantly kept moving house. So in the end, I constantly managed to not do particularly well at school in my younger life, and so I would be told I was done. I wasn't going to achieve. I was useless. Now, when I look back at my exam results, they weren't that bad at all. They weren't as bad as I thought, apart from mathematics, where I sort of bombed out absolutely terribly. But one of the things that used to happen in the middle of the night, I used to have these dreams. And they became so much a reality, an escape hatch for me as a child. I used to imagine myself standing against a wall and growing tall. I used to imagine myself floating around, and I was above everyone else, and I was telling them that they were the ones that were not so good after all. It was a kind of a mechanism that I used without consciously choosing to say that maybe I'm not as weak and as small as I appeared. And I'd come out of those dreams to the shock and reality of life. There they were. Then there was another one I had happen to me. Of course, it's got to be the looks. When I was younger, I didn't think I looked particularly good. Most young men don't necessarily think too much about it, especially when I was particularly younger. I never thought much about it. Now, I know now that I'm actually quite handsome. Now, some of you may or may not agree with that, but my wife thinks I am, and that's all that matters to me because the value is there. I don't even care if you don't anymore, but there was a day when I cared intensely about what you would have thought. There was a day when, if I had a zit on my face, it used to worry me. As a young man, I remember buying Forac because the doctor said that was the only thing that would get rid of my zits. Well, I put on the Forac, I put on the pre-treatment, I did all the stuff, and it just seemed to multiply the zits. You ever notice that? They kept coming. However, there was one young lady, name was Suzanne. There was another young lady. There was actually several young ladies when I think about it, who obviously thought there was a higher value on me than I could perceive in myself. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells you I'm handsome, but apart from that, it also would tell you that I had a wrong perspective about myself. Now, I would want to say that probably at least some of you here don't think you're particularly beautiful or particularly handsome. No, I don't think that's a very helpful thought. Because it's all relative if you think about it. You see, for me it was relative because Pauline loves me. She doesn't love you. She looks at some of you, especially some of the guys, and thinks, you're not as pretty, no, not as handsome, as perhaps I am. Now, I know one guy she thought was a little more handsome than me, but it only flattered me because he was very handsome. But the thing that was there, the thing that is relative. You see, for women, it's worse than it is for guys, because women compare themselves to the models that are shown in magazines. I've got to be honest with you. Guys think the wrong things when they see those magazines, quite often. Guys struggle with those issues. And I remember years ago being fooled when I came here to Porirua. One Samoan who obviously had a very good sense of humour told me that Samoans all liked fat women. The fatter they were, the better they liked them. Now, I believed this story, much to my embarrassment later, when I very astutely mentioned it in a service one Sunday. And David, one of our elders, came up to me afterwards and said, "Who told you this?" And I told him. He laughed his head off at me. He said, "Yes, if your wife is a little plumper than usual, it seems to indicate that you're wealthy, but that doesn't mean to say the Samoan prefers a fat woman for a wife." You see, it's all relative. It's all relative. If you compare yourself with the gossip magazines, most of you, let's be honest, haven't got a show of competing with that, if that's what beauty is. But I'm not sure that that's what beauty is. I'm not sure that the value that's been placed in that magazine is a value at all that's worth our recognition or holding to. My wife, some of you know, is petite. She's short, she's light, she's under 6 stone, usually 5.5. She's got her own beauty. It's very interesting, the other night, Johanna was looking at some photos in the album, and she said, "Mum, you look really pretty." And I sat there and thought, I knew that all along. Now, if you get the perspective right, Johanna could then draw the conclusion and say, "Well, I must have come from Mum." But I pointed out to her that she actually looks a lot like me. And that's pretty good. The thing is, you see, our values are all relative. So when we value ourselves, it tends to be relative. Education, the experiences we have. You know, I remember some years ago, Adele, who was lacking in confidence of any kind, She had no confidence virtually in herself in certain areas of her life because of something that had happened to her when she was younger. This had triggered some responses. She didn't want to go to camp. Queen Margaret College had this camp. They wanted the students to go. She pleaded with me. She begged with me. She told me I was a mean father making her go to camp. So I went to camp with her. I thought that was a good way of showing that I wasn't a mean father, but I think it was good for her to go. So I went to camp, and one of the things they had on this camp, and if I'd known about this, I might have thought twice about going myself. She didn't know about it. Was a rope swing. Well, a rope swing. They have the bridge up near Otaki Forks. I don't know how many of you have been there. They have the rope anchored in the middle of the bridge, and the rope goes out to one side, and you're meant to step off the side and drop, and you plummet down, and it's not a bungee, it's a rope. You plummet down, and the rope takes up because it's on the big swing. You drop down, and then suddenly the rope takes over, and you do this massive, big 60-metre swing. That's huge. It's awesomely scary. I really wanted to delve into it because I knew it'd be good for her. So I stood down the bottom below the bridge and I looked up and I called out, "You can do it, Poppy. You can do it." And the guy on the bridge was absolutely marvellous. He talked her through it and she got out on the bridge and she decided, being a rational-minded person, no good fiddling around thinking about this. You've got to do it first time, so she just stepped off the bridge and my heart went, "Whee! My daughter's just flying through the air," and I wasn't feeling too excited. The flashes through my mind were, if the rope breaks, what happens? Wasn't good. Oh, she swung and she screamed her head off all the way. They got her down and I caught her and got her out so she didn't end up in the river. And up on the bridge, the guy up the top yells out, "Your daughter did it, now it's your turn." That was different. I didn't like the idea of swinging off the rope, but me being me, I didn't want to say to my daughter, "You do it," and I wouldn't. That's not good. That's not a healthy response, except if I perhaps had a medical condition. I could have probably thought of one, but I couldn't at the time. So I climbed up on the bridge and I decided, well, if you're going to do it, you do it properly. So instead of stepping back off the bridge, I thought it'd be fun to dive off the front. What I didn't think about, if you think about this, pendulum swing, right? Well, I sort of dived forward, which meant, if you work it out, I dropped most of the distance. My body was falling forward, and when the rope suddenly snapped up, my body went, "Round!" Oh, I've broken my back. I flung around, and instead of swinging with the bridge, the impact of me spinning like this meant that the thing started swinging with the river, and it meant in the middle of the river, and it meant there was only one place they could lower me, and to make it worse, I almost passed out. There were big silver droplets in front of my eyes, and all I could see was the bush going backwards. Then it was that I remembered I don't like swings. I felt terribly sick. I managed to struggle through the water and half swim, half rope dangle, half clamber into the rocks. I came out of that and I thought, I'm proud of my daughter. She did something that was really hard for her. I was just plain mad. She was being rational. You see, she realised that what I was trying to do, and we talked about it afterwards, I was trying to say to my daughter, there's some things that are important that you need to do. Now, jumping off a bridge with rope sounds like a crazy thing to do, but for her, that was important. For another person, I would select one or two of you out of sheer vindictiveness to chuck you off a bridge. But I'm not a vindictive person, so I wouldn't do it. But for another person, the thing it would do, it would actually damage you to do the same thing. Because your values would be different, your reasons for doing things would be different. So let's be clear as we start this journey tonight, that none of us are the same. We all have different personalities. We all have different life experiences. We all have different opportunities. And in this congregation, there are 27 cultures. We all have different looks. And some are handsome and pretty in the eyes of the secular world, and some are not. However, if some of you went to Russia, you would no longer be considered as pretty unless you looked like a Russian. If you go to India, you may not be considered pretty unless you looked like an Indian. Well, there might be some that would think differently. You go to the Philippines, I was amazed. The television, they had this stuff on their TV, and they had this actor and an actress, and everybody was glued to the TV. It was their hero and heroine. They didn't even know about our ones. Their experiences were vastly different to ours. Their education, vastly different to ours. They don't have the opportunities that we have to study in the way that we do. But I tell you what, the ones that get the values thing right in terms of themselves, it makes no real difference. It will affect us. It will knock us. And every one of us will have areas of pain, perhaps in several of these factors here, that will cause us to have a value about ourselves that is not healthy. And the thing that happens, if that happens, is that we then are unable to function as well as we are designed to. We might feel reasonably content with where we're at, but it's not until you discover where you can be, even beyond where you're at, that you realise the potential for change. We're a needs-oriented society. Isn't that true? On television, most of the adverts say, you need this. We had a wee chuckle this afternoon. I turned on TV and watched some of the car racing, and during the car racing there was an advert. There was an advert about a ball that you sit on, and they suggest you should take it to work or take it to school, and you'll keep your back straight and it'll improve your abs and all butt and all the rest of it. Johanna said, imagine everybody at school on one of those. It was a boggling thought. I said to her, well, if everybody did that, you could say you were having a ball. But we're a needs-oriented society. We are definitely needs-oriented. You know, in our story tonight, with the couple with the son could see through the parent. The son could see what needed to happen. The son was on a journey that the parents just didn't understand. And it was hard. I remember a young man years ago when I lived in Blenheim who had this immense difficulty because his mother had some problems. Whenever she looked in a mirror, she'd smash it. So in the end, they had no mirrors in their house. She was actually quite a pretty woman, but she believed that she was ugly. She believed that her children were ugly and that everything they did was ugly. And she believed just about everything was bad. So she would do some strange things. I remember her one day going over to see her son. I got over there and he told me he didn't want me to come into the house. He told me to go away, in a nice way. And I didn't know what it meant, so me being me, I persisted. And in the end, he let me in the house. And I went in and he had this beautiful model train set that took up a whole room, beautifully designed. He'd spent many long hours building this thing with his father. And I looked at the devastation of what his mother had done. She had track, she had wrecked everything. This young boy, he was my age, we were about 10 or 11 at the time. Wrecked absolutely everything because she didn't value herself or value or anything else. It was a terrible time. I still remember it. You know, it even happens, like I said, sometimes in church. Sometimes people come to worship in church even, and what they do has to do with what they get out of it rather than the purpose of what church should be all about, is what God should get out of it. And what that says to me very clearly, and it happens in other aspects of life, says to me very clearly, we have got it wrong. We have so often got it wrong. Why have we got it wrong? Well, in the needs society is based, and it would never be functioning well, the needs type of advertising, etc., if we were a community rather than individualists. You see, we've got these two opposing forces. And at the moment, let's be honest, individualism's winning. Individualism dumps on others. It wants others to get things the way that I want it. Individualism means that I don't relate to some people or some groups of people or some individuals or some family member. Individualism means I don't consider what the other person needs. And when I've got a value that doesn't consider others, then I also reap that value in return. You see, when there's an absence of community, it leaves people struggling in the absence of that collective group, and they end up struggling to survive. There will be always some individuals who will peak, and unfortunately I think we make a mistake in our society. We make a mistake and say, see how well this person has done, who has done it on his own, or her own. That's okay, but I think we give a message which is wrong. We should be able to say, see this community, what they have done together. How many of you have seen the film with Eric Liddell, Chariots of Fire, where the coach wasn't even allowed to attend the games, had to sleep and sit in a rented room where he could see from a distance to a degree, hear the radio. There was no acknowledgement given of his giftedness at the time, at coaching and training this young Christian man and a young Jewish man. There were two different situations there. Community wasn't valued. Those people who had invested so much of their lives and the ones that were running so hard were not valued. And yet, without them, they probably wouldn't have achieved the things that they did. And the point of the film was that community mattered more than anything else. That honouring God for the Christian guy mattered more. See, if we have community, we have room for appreciation for each other. If we have individualism, it's what I can achieve, and if I have to knock others down or climb over others to get there, then so be it. But if I live in a community that learns to value me and to expect me to value others, then it will change the face of this world. Communism tried to achieve it. It was the ideal in the communist mind. But it forgot the nature of man. The nature of men and women is that we will always degenerate. Community gives opportunity for parents not to have to carry the load on their own. And may I say it like this. We have two daughters who we love dearly. We've also got Sailor in our family too as a daughter now. We love all three dearly. But the people here in this community, some of them in this community here, have helped us raise them. Some try to interfere at times with our responsibility. But by and large, those same people and others gave real value to our family and to the values that our children hold. It wasn't just us. It was a community. But some people live in the Christian community as if they're still individuals. And that's not what it's all about. We are designed for community. There was a story just after Jesus had been killed where two guys, Peter and John, recorded in the book of Acts, were out speaking very, very, very boldly and very strongly and very clearly and very forthrightly, and they were communicating amazingly powerfully. And this is what was said about them. When they saw the courage, the religious leaders and other people of the day, when they saw the courage of Peter and John and realised that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished and they took note that these men had been with Jesus. Might I say that these men had lived in community with Jesus. There's a well-known story about a guy called Jerry. We've got a Jerry here, but it's not him. This guy called Jerry was a guy that people just loved to hate because he was kind of always positive, always optimistic, always looking for the best. And one of the things that happened with Jerry was that whenever anything went wrong in the eyes of others, people would say, "How come you're so happy, Jerry?" He says, "Well, I always look at the positive. I always seek to find the positive in it. I always seek to get the best." So Jerry would annoy some people because that's not the way they would operate. He said, "My life's a lot happier since I've looked at the positive and I've worked the way I have in my life." Well, one day, Jerry was caught in the middle of an incident with some people shooting guns at each other. And he got some bullet fragments and some bullets in his body. And he was dying. And as he lay in the ambulance guy says, "You'll be all right, buddy." But he could hear somebody else in the background saying, "No shame. You'll be all right, buddy," says the ambulance guy. But the ambulance guy would say that to everybody. He knew that. He got into the hospital and this nurse was looking at him, the doctors were looking at him, and the doctors were shaking their heads, and they thought he couldn't see them clearly. But he could see them enough through the days of pain and as his mind was being affected by this whole experience, his body being stuck with bullets. And the nurse was trying to get to him and she said, "Are you allergic to anything?" And Jerry lay there and he thought, "These guys want me to die." And it's not they wanted him to die, but that's the way he perceived it. These guys want me to die. He thought, "I've got to think of something positive to say." And the nurse said, "Are you allergic to anything?" And he took a deep breath and he struggled out and he says, "Bullets!" At which point the doctors and nurses cracked up laughing. And they worked their hardest to get this guy because he had a positive attitude and they knew they could save him. He wanted to live. There's a choice we all have to make. Are we going to die of the bullets? Or are we going to take the bullets and are we going to turn them into positive experiences? And I would like to suggest very clearly to you tonight, the reason that Peter and John were like they were is because they had suffered some bullets, but they knew they were allergic to them. And they knew that God was on their side in spite of everything. You see, one of the bits of wisdom we have tonight, a man's pride brings him low, but a man of lowly spirit gains honour. That's the one extreme. Some people are so full of pride that they'll be low they'll never ever go anywhere. They'll never ever achieve anything. They might achieve it in their own eyes, might achieve it in one or two other people's eyes, but those who are discerning will see. And then the second one, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment and according with the measure of faith God has given you. And I think some of us here tonight are probably lacking in some measure of faith. Maybe even an absence of faith for some of us here tonight. But if we don't have God to measure against, we're only measuring against some other individual. And whether a person who's very proud, thinks too highly of ourselves, or thinks too lowly of ourselves, because some of us here maybe think, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to be. And I've experienced that personally. But I'd like to suggest tonight that you really seriously start to turn the corner. I would like to state quite clearly that we are designed for community. We are clearly and absolutely designed for community. Do you know this old song, Standing in the Need of Prayer? It was an old popular song many years ago that was on the secular radios that sort of somehow captured the heart of people many, many years ago. There was a little girl called Jenny who was in the back seat of the car singing to herself. And she didn't quite get the words right. And she said, it's not my brother, not my sister, but it's me, O Lord, standing in the need of praise. Certainly, we all know God's affirmation from time to time if we seek for Him. But we need to be what people who are going to give and receive praise. And that can only happen in true community. It doesn't happen arbitrarily. And the community that God's designed us for is a community of support and encouragement that should be upbuilding us and not tearing down. It's one that means that we need to keep ourselves in God's love. It's one that means that we have a promise of eternal life, so we don't need to feel discouraged if we feel that some area we're maybe not doing so well in. Because at the end of the day, the thing that God has promised is that He's going to change it. It's kind of like this. His Valentine for us was that He values us so highly, so very, very highly, that He gave everything He had for us. I shall never forget the day I realised that. I'm not one prone to getting into tears. Some of you know there's only a couple of things that will get me to tears. And it's very difficult to get me to tears through hurt or whatever. But when God got a hold of me and opened my mind for some repairs, one of the first things God addressed was, did I believe that God had created me as beautiful? Did I believe that God had created me for good purpose? Did I believe that I was worth dying for? Because if I don't, well, I just go and live a life where I was. But somehow I knew right about the truth. And when I got myself sorted out with God, and it's still a process, I'm not perfect and I'm still working on it. As I processed through that journey, I came to a place where I realised that this faith thing was important. See, if you read the rest of that passage, and it comes from the book of Romans, It actually talks about the importance of being a part of the body He made, and He made all of us to fit into it. Whether we know Him or not, He made us all to fit. And the value we have, He says in the text, is that one of us will fit here, and one of us will fit there, and one of us will fit over here, and one of us will fit here, and we don't have to worry about competing with anybody else, because God values us the way He designed us right now. And who we are, and what He's made us, and even the destructive and the negative things that have been in our lives, they are valuable. For me, it's because I've been able to help others sometimes because of the damage I had been through, and I understood it. But the real thing as we enter this series on valuing yourself, society can make all sorts of benchmarks. They can create all sorts of benchmarks for us. But at the end of the day, that's not what matters. We can change benchmarks. But you can't change what God wants. You can change what other people might want, but you can't change what God might want. And I'm going to talk to God right now, and I'd invite you to share with me. If you're a Christian here, I know at least some of you are low on some values, self-esteem things. What the things are that He would like us to talk to Him. Father God, sometimes we've looked at the bullets and we felt like we've been shot, and at times we felt like there's no recovery. We want to ask you to help us to be like the man in the story, Jerry. To be people who can see that what would seem so destructive can be turned around. And Lord, for us to be able to be in a place of faith to believe you to do it. Because without you, most of us already know here that we can't do much on our own. We've tried kicking habits, we've tried dealing with issues, and they still haunt us sometimes. So God, help us and be with us and enable us to live in your community. Forgive us for the fact that we haven't lived the way that you would want us to live. Help us to be like you. Always valuing others. Always building up others. And always willing to take the risk with you. Forgive us for the times we failed to do that. Forgive us for the times we failed to acknowledge what you want for us. We say you want the peace. Help us to understand what we pray in Jesus' name. And all the people said, Amen. And all the people said, Amen. Now what I'd like you to do this week is a little exercise as you go on the journey. I'd like you to think of one thing where you know that you're vulnerable. I'd like you to say to God, whether you know Him or not, drop it at the moment. I want you to say to God, help me in this next week to understand what you would like for me in this area where I know I lack value of myself. Help me to be reshaped. Show me what it's like. Give me a taste of what it's like to be like you want me to be. I promise you do that with God, He will always honour it. Have a wonderful week. May the Lord bless you. Let's show some appreciation for the